My name is Aiba Khan, and I found out I wasn't invited to my own sister's wedding on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting in my Denver apartment, staring at a spreadsheet filled with quarterly pharmaceutical shipment data. My coffee had gone cold, but I hadn't noticed. Numbers always calmed me. They made sense. People didn't. My phone rang. "Sweetheart, we need to talk about Myra's wedding," my mother said, her voice soft in that artificial way she used when delivering bad news. I smiled automatically. "What about it?" "I already requested leave from work." "It's in 3 weeks, right?" Silence. The kind that makes your stomach drop before your brain catches up. "Well, your father and I were handling the travel arrangements, and somehow we forgot to book your flight and hotel. We just realized. Everything's fully booked now. It's peak season in Maui." I didn't speak for a second. "You forgot," I repeated calmly. "These things happen, Aiba. We've been so busy. Myra understands. We'll send you pictures." Pictures? Like I was some distant relative. I stared at the family photo pinned on my wall from last Christmas. Myra had her arm around me. Zayan was grinning in the corner. We looked like a close family. We weren't. I had spent 27 years being the background character. Myra, the golden architect daughter. Zayan, the charismatic entrepreneur. And me. Reliable Aiba. Quiet. Responsible. Easy to overlook. "That's fine," I said flatly. "Oh, I'm so glad you understand," Mom replied with visible relief. "Myra was worried you'd be upset." After the call ended, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there for an hour. Then I opened my laptop, not to search flights to Hawaii, but something else entirely. The next morning, I scheduled a meeting with my supervisor, Mrs. Collins. "A year," she blinked at me. "A sabbatical." "I need time," I said. "Personal projects. I've been here 6 years. I want to reassess my future." She studied me carefully. I was her most dependable analyst. The one who fixed problems quietly. The one who stayed late without complaining. "You deserve it," she finally said. "Your job will be here when you return." I walked out of her office lighter than I had felt in years. That evening, I sent a message in the family group chat, "Won't make the wedding. Taking time for myself. Going offline for a while. Love you." Myra replied instantly. "What? Where are you going?" I didn't answer. Over the next week, I sold most of my furniture. Put my car in storage. Sublet my apartment. I reduced my entire life to 2 suitcases and 1 backpack. Calls came in constantly. "Zayan, what's going on? Mom's freaking out. Myra, this isn't funny. Please call me." I let everything go to voicemail. The day before my sister's beach wedding in Maui, I boarded a flight. Not to Hawaii. To Tokyo. As the plane lifted off the runway, something shifted inside me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the dependable middle child. I wasn't the forgotten one. I wasn't waiting for someone to remember me. I was choosing myself. And that decision would change everything. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating non-stop on my nightstand. For a few seconds, I just stared at the ceiling, hoping it would stop. It didn't. When I finally picked it up, I saw 12 missed calls from my mother, 3 from my father, and 5 messages from Ryan. I sighed. The last time my family blew up my phone like this was when I refused to co-sign Ryan's failed business loan. Back then, they called me selfish. This time, I had a feeling it was worse. I dragged myself out of bed, walked to the kitchen of my apartment, and made coffee before listening to the voicemails. I needed caffeine for whatever storm was coming. The first voicemail was from Mom, Margaret. "Adrian, how could you embarrass us like that?" Her voice trembled with anger. "Your Aunt Carol called me this morning. She said you told everyone at dinner the truth about the house. Was that necessary?" I clenched my jaw. The truth. That word always seemed to hurt them more than lies. The second voicemail was Dad, Thomas. "Son, you could have handled this privately," he said in his usual controlled tone. "There's no need to create drama. We are family." Family. The same word they used whenever they wanted something from me. I took a long sip of coffee and leaned against the counter, replaying last night in my head. Aunt Carol had asked who paid the final deposit for the house renovation. Mom proudly said, "Oh, we all contributed." That was the lie. I had transferred almost $80,000 from my savings to save that house from foreclosure. Ryan had promised to repay me once his startup took off. It never did. And yet, at dinner, they acted like I'd barely helped. So yes, I corrected them. "I paid the deposit," I said calmly at the table. "And the property tax. And the contractor's fees." The silence after that was deafening. Ryan glared at me like I'd betrayed him. Mom forced a smile and changed the subject. But the damage was done. Now, apparently, I was the villain. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Ryan calling. I answered. "What?" I said flatly. "You didn't have to humiliate us," he snapped. No greeting. No hesitation. I told the truth. "You made me look irresponsible." "You are irresponsible, Ryan." There was silence on the other end. Then he laughed bitterly. "You've always thought you were better than me." "That's not true." "Yes, it is. Ever since college. Ever since you started making money." I ran a hand through my hair. This wasn't about last night. This was about years of resentment. "I helped you," I said quietly. "Every single time. Helping doesn't mean throwing it in our faces." I felt something inside me shift. "I didn't throw anything in your face." I corrected a lie. He didn't respond. Instead, he said something that hit harder than I expected. "Mom and Dad think you're trying to distance yourself from the family. They think you're planning to cut us off." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "They only think that because they know they've been depending on me." "You owe us," he said suddenly. That word. "Oh? For what?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "For everything they did raising you." I felt my chest tighten. So that was it. All the sacrifices I made. All the money. All the sleepless nights working overtime so I could help them. None of it mattered. Because in their minds, I would always be indebted. "I didn't realize love came with a lifetime invoice," I said. Ryan exhaled sharply. "You're twisting this." "No," I replied. "I'm finally seeing it clearly." There was another long pause. Then he said, quieter this time, "So what now?" I looked around my apartment, the space I paid for, built for myself, fought for. "For the first time," I said slowly, "I'm choosing me." He hung up without another word. I stood there for a long time after the call ended, staring at the dark screen of my phone. Part of me felt guilty. But a bigger part of me felt something else. Relief. Because for the first time, I wasn't trying to fix everything. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. I didn't hear from my parents for 3 days after that call with Ryan. 3 quiet, peaceful days. No guilt-tripping texts. No dramatic voicemails. No passive-aggressive Facebook posts about ungrateful children. For the first time in years, my phone was silent. And I didn't hate it. I threw myself into work. Being a senior financial consultant meant long hours, but I preferred numbers over emotions. Numbers made sense. They followed rules. They didn't twist themselves into weapons. On Thursday afternoon, as I was wrapping up a client presentation, my assistant knocked lightly on my office door. "Adrian," she said carefully, "there's someone here to see you." I frowned. Did they have an appointment? She hesitated. "No, but she says she's your mother." Of course she did. I closed my laptop slowly. "Send her in." Margaret walked into my office like she owned the building. Perfectly styled hair. Designer handbag. The same confident posture she used at charity events. But her eyes were sharp. "You're hard to reach these days," she said, skipping any greeting. "I've been busy." "With your own life," she replied pointedly. I leaned back in my chair. "Why are you here, Mom?" She sat down without being invited. "We need to talk about your attitude." I almost smiled. "My attitude?" "Yes," she said firmly. "You embarrassed your father and me. Do you know how that made us look?" There it was again. Not how we felt. Not why you're upset. But how they looked. I corrected a false statement, I said evenly. "You didn't have to say it like that." "How should I have said it? Should I have kept pretending Ryan contributed equally?" Her lips tightened. "Your brother is going through a difficult time. He's been going through a difficult time for 10 years. That's cruel." "It's factual." She inhaled sharply. "You've changed," she said quietly. "No," I replied. "I've just stopped absorbing everything silently." Her eyes softened for a second. Then they hardened again. "Your father is considering selling the lake house." I blinked. "The lake house?" "Yes. The mortgage is behind. Ryan can't help right now." "Of course he couldn't." "And?" I asked. She looked at me like the answer was obvious. "We were hoping you could step in. Just temporarily. Until things stabilize." I stared at her. The lake house wasn't some emergency shelter. It was their vacation property. Their pride. The place they hosted friends every summer. "How much?" I asked flatly. She shifted slightly. "About $45,000. I let out a slow breath. "Mom. I already gave you 80 for the primary house." That was different. "How?" "That was family stability. This is preserving something important." Important. I thought about the overtime shifts. The investments I liquidated early. The promotions I chased just so I could afford to be their safety net. "I can't," I said finally. Her face changed instantly. "You can't. Or you won't." "I won't." Silence filled the room. "After everything we've done for you," she whispered. There it was again. The invisible debt. "You chose to have me," I said calmly. "Raising me wasn't a favor." Her expression hardened like stone. "So this is who you are now?" "No," I said quietly. "This is who I've always been. I just don't feel guilty anymore." She stood abruptly. "You're breaking this family apart." I didn't raise my voice. If the family only works when I fund it, then it was already broken. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me. And maybe she didn't. Because the version of me she knew was the one who said yes. The one who fixed things. The one who paid quietly. Without another word, she turned and walked out of my office. The door closed softly behind her. I expected to feel crushed. Instead, I felt steady. It wasn't anger anymore. It was clarity. That evening, I sat on my balcony watching the city lights flicker on one by one. For years, I thought love meant sacrifice. But I was starting to realize something else. Love shouldn't feel like a financial contract. And if saying no makes me the villain in their story, then maybe I'm finally the hero in mine. But deep down, I knew something. My parents weren't used to hearing no. And people who aren't used to hearing no don't give up easily. And by Friday evening, I realized something important. Silence from my family never meant peace. It meant planning. I was halfway through dinner when my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Mom. It wasn't Dad. It was Aunt Carol. I stared at the screen for a second before answering. "Hi, Aunt Carol." "Oh, sweetheart," she began, her voice dripping with sympathy. "I just spoke to your mother. She's devastated." "Of course she is." "I see," I replied calmly. "She says you refused to help save the lake house." "Adrian, that place holds so many memories. Your grandparents built it. And here it was." Phase 2, emotional pressure. "I know who built it," I said evenly. "I also know I've already contributed more than my share." She sighed. "Family helps family. I have helped." Repeatedly. "Yes, but this time it feels different," she pressed. "Your parents feel like you're pulling away." I leaned back in my chair. "Maybe I am." There was a pause on the line. "Is this about Ryan?" she asked gently. "It's about accountability." "Oh honey, you've always been the strong one." That sentence used to make me proud. Now it just sounded like permission for everyone else to stay weak. After we hung up, I stared at the city skyline through my apartment window. My reflection stared back at me, tired, older than I felt. I thought back to college. While Ryan switched majors 3 times and dropped classes halfway through semesters, I worked 2 part-time jobs. When Dad's business had a slow year, I sent money home without telling anyone. When Ryan crashed his car, I paid for repairs. When Mom wanted to renovate the kitchen, I invested. Every time, I told myself it was temporary. But temporary turned into expectation. And expectation turned into obligation. Saturday morning proved my point. I opened my banking app to check an incoming client payment, and froze. A pending withdrawal request. From my father. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Years ago, when I was younger and more trusting, Dad had helped me open that account. His name had remained as a secondary user for emergencies. I never thought he'd use it. I called him immediately. "What is this?" I demanded as soon as he answered. His tone was calm, too calm. "I was going to tell you. We need to secure the lake house before the bank escalates. You tried to withdraw $20,000 without asking me. We're family. I assumed you'd understand." "No," I said sharply. "You assumed I'd accept it." There was a pause. "You're overreacting." I almost laughed. "Remove yourself from my account," I said. "Adrian, today." His voice hardened. "You're making a mistake." "No," I replied steadily. "I'm correcting one." He exhaled heavily. "So that's it. You're cutting us off." "I'm setting boundaries." "Same thing." "It's not." Silence again. Then he said something that hit harder than anything else. "Ryan was right about you." My grip tightened on the phone. "About what?" "That success changed you." I closed my eyes. Success didn't change me. It just made me independent enough to say no. If independence feels like betrayal to you, I said quietly, then maybe we define family differently. He didn't respond. We both knew the conversation was over. After I hung up, I drove straight to the bank and removed his access. The banker looked surprised but didn't ask questions. When I walked out, I expected guilt to crash over me. It didn't. Instead, I felt something else. Control. For years, I'd been living like my role in the family was fixed, the provider, the fixer, the responsible one. But roles aren't permanent. They only stay if you keep playing them. That evening, my phone exploded again. Group chat, family first. Mom, I can't believe you'd humiliate your father like this. Ryan, unbelievable. Dad, call us. I typed one message. I will not discuss finances in a group chat. I've supported this family for years. That support was voluntary, not mandatory. Going forward, my accounts are private. Please respect that. 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. No one responded. For the first time, they didn't know how to. And as I set my phone face down on the table, I realized something important. They were used to controlling the narrative. But now, they were losing control. And people who lose control sometimes do desperate things. And by Sunday night, I realized my family wasn't just upset. They were strategizing. I found out the hard way. It started with a call from my cousin, Daniel. Hey, he said awkwardly. I didn't want to get involved, but, have you seen what Uncle Thomas posted? A cold feeling crept into my chest. Posted where? Facebook. Of course. I opened the app, already bracing myself. There it was. A long paragraph about children who forget their roots, about how money can poison loyalty, about parents who sacrifice everything only to be abandoned. No names mentioned. But everyone knew. The comments were worse. Stay strong. You deserve better. Kids today are selfish. Ryan had commented too. Some people only care about themselves. I stared at the screen, my jaw tightening. This wasn't private anymore. This was public pressure. For a moment, anger surged through me. Then something unexpected happened. I started laughing. Not because it was funny. Because it was predictable. When guilt stopped working privately, they escalated publicly. Classic move. I closed the app and tossed my phone onto the couch. If they wanted attention, they weren't getting it from me. But an hour later, Mom called again. I let it ring. She called again. And again. Finally, I answered. What do you want? Her voice was shaking, but not from sadness. From frustration. You forced your father to defend himself publicly. I didn't force him to post anything. You humiliated him at dinner. You cut off his access to your account. What did you expect? I expected adults to respect boundaries. You could have handled this quietly. I tried. She went silent. Then she said something that changed everything. Ryan is moving into the lake house. I blinked. What? He needs stability. After everything that's happened, he's been under a lot of stress. Under stress. He doesn't have a job, Mom. He's working on opportunities. That's what he's been saying for years. Her tone sharpened. Why are you so determined to see him fail? I'm not. I just refuse to finance his denial. She exhaled sharply. If you would just help one more time, no. The word came out firm. Unshaken. Silence. You're choosing money over family, she whispered. And that's when something inside me finally snapped into clarity. No, I said slowly. I'm choosing self-respect over manipulation. She hung up. No goodbye. No dramatic speech. Just a click. I stood there in my living room, staring at nothing. For years, I thought if I just gave enough, did enough, sacrificed enough, they would eventually see me. Not as a bank account. Not as the responsible one. But as a son. But the truth was uncomfortable. The more I gave, the more they expected. And the moment I stopped giving, I became the villain. Monday morning, things escalated further. I arrived at work to find an email forwarded to HR. From Ryan. Subject line, concern regarding Adrian Keller's conduct. My stomach dropped, and when I opened that email from Ryan, I realized he had finally crossed a line. The forwarded message to HR wasn't vague. It wasn't emotional. It was calculated. Ryan had accused me of financial misconduct, claiming that I had pressured family members into private loan agreements, and that I had a history of using my professional position to intimidate others financially. I read it twice. Then a third time. Each sentence more absurd than the last. There were no contracts. No threats. No leverage. Just voluntary transfers I made out of love. But Ryan had twisted generosity into coercion. I leaned back in my chair and let out a slow breath. This wasn't about money anymore. This was retaliation. An hour later, HR called me into a meeting. The room was sterile. Neutral. Uncomfortable. Adrian, Karen from HR began carefully, we received a complaint. We are obligated to review it. I understand, I said calmly. She studied me for a moment. Is there any truth to these claims? No, I replied without hesitation. All financial support I gave my family was voluntary. I have documentation of every transfer. And I did. I always did. Because unlike Ryan, I believed in paper trails. I forwarded bank records, text messages where my parents thanked me, and even a message from Ryan himself that read, I promise I'll pay you back once things stabilize. Karen skimmed through the documents. Her expression shifted from concern to clarity. This appears to be a personal dispute, she said finally. It is? We'll close the review unless new evidence surfaces. Relief washed over me, but it was mixed with something darker. Disappointment. Not because HR doubted me, but because my own brother had tried to damage my career. When I left the office, my phone buzzed again. Ryan. I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. What do you want? I asked. You could have just helped, he said flatly. I almost laughed. So you tried to sabotage my job. You forced my hand. No, I said firmly. You exposed yourself. He was quiet for a moment. You think you're untouchable, he muttered. I think I'm done being manipulated. You ruined the family. There it was again. Always my fault. Ryan, I said calmly, when you sent that email, you didn't just attack me. You confirmed exactly why I had to set boundaries. You're dramatic. No. I'm finished. The word hung between us. Finished. You don't mean that, he said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. I do. Silence. Then he said something softer. Almost desperate. What am I supposed to do? And for the first time, I heard it. Not anger. Not entitlement. Fear. But I couldn't rescue him anymore. That's not my responsibility, I replied. He hung up without another word. That evening, I drove aimlessly through the city, headlights blurring past me. I wasn't angry. I was grieving. Not the money. Not the reputation scare. But the version of my family I kept hoping existed. The supportive parents. The grateful brother. The mutual respect. It wasn't real. And maybe it never was. When I got home, there was an envelope slipped under my door. No stamp. No address. Just my name written in my father's handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper. A photocopy of a document. The Lake House mortgage. With a note scribbled at the bottom, final notice. Auction in 30 days. I stared at it. Not because I was panicking. But because I understood the move. Pressure tactic. One last attempt to trigger guilt. But this time, something was different. Instead of anxiety, I felt clarity. If the house went to auction, that was the consequence of years of financial mismanagement. Not my refusal. For the first time in my life, I wasn't rushing to fix it. I folded the paper calmly and placed it on the kitchen counter. Then I did something I should have done years ago. I blocked Ryan's number. Then my father's. Then my mother's. Not out of anger. But out of necessity. Because boundaries only work if they are enforced. As I stood there in the quiet of my apartment, I felt the weight of what I'd just done. I wasn't just saying no anymore. I was stepping away entirely. And for the first time, the silence didn't feel temporary. It felt permanent. And 30 days later, the lake house was gone. Auctioned. Sold to a developer, according to what little I heard through extended relatives. I didn't attend. I didn't ask questions. And I didn't offer a single dollar. The silence after blocking them was loud at first. I kept reaching for my phone out of habit. Expecting drama. Accusations. Emergencies. Nothing came. Ryan didn't show up at my office again. Dad didn't try to access my accounts. Mom didn't send emotional messages through relatives. It was as if, once they realized the guilt no longer worked, they ran out of strategy. 2 weeks after the auction, I received a text from an unknown number. This is Dad. We are meeting at Aunt Carol's on Sunday. You should come. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just expectation. I stared at it for a long time. Then I replied. I hope you're all well. I won't be attending. That was it. No explanation. No anger. Just a boundary. Sunday came and went quietly. Instead of driving to Aunt Carol's house, I drove 2 hours north to a small town I'd visited once for a client meeting. There was a modest property for sale there. Nothing flashy. No lake view. No sentimental legacy attached. Just a peaceful house with large windows and a backyard big enough for a garden. I'd been thinking about it for weeks. Not as an escape, but as a reset. While standing in the empty living room, sunlight pouring through the glass, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Possibility. No inherited expectations. No financial obligations disguised as love. No role assigned to me before I could speak. Just space. I made an offer that afternoon. 3 days later, it was accepted. When I signed the final paperwork, the agent smiled and said, "First-time buyer." I almost laughed. "No," I said. "First-time owner." Because this one was different. This one wasn't purchased to save someone else. It wasn't funded by guilt. It wasn't tied to proving my worth. It was mine. That evening, as I stood alone in my new backyard, I thought about everything that had happened. The dinner. The public posts. The HR complaint. The auction notice slipped under my door. At one point, all of it would have shattered me. But now, it felt like distance. I won't pretend it doesn't hurt. There are moments when I miss the idea of family dinners. The comfort of familiar voices. The illusion that we were united. But I don't miss the pressure. I don't miss the invisible invoice. And I don't miss feeling responsible for everyone's survival but my own. A week later, I received one final message. From Mom. It wasn't long. We hope you're happy. I stared at it for a while. For once, it didn't feel sarcastic. It felt tired. I typed back slowly. I am. No arguments followed. No guilt. Just silence. Maybe one day they'll understand that boundaries aren't rejection. They are protection. Maybe one day Ryan will figure out his own path without expecting someone else to finance it. Maybe one day we'll talk again, not as debtor and creditors, not as roles, but as equals. But if that day never comes, I'll still be okay. Because for the first time in my life, I'm not living to stabilize someone else's chaos. I'm building something steady. And the peace that comes with that. It's worth more than any lake house ever was.